notes here. So really quickly, when it says page 1, and I'm going to try to open this up on that document, we first identified really quickly the priorities, and people talked about athletics, but then it was combined with extracurricular, co-curricular, and then the SRO, the school resource officer. But I'm going to jump, there's the possible solutions that people talked about. Can the community help raise funds? Can community donate funds? Booster Club, raise funds. Can we group created fundraising? Can it group created fundraising? What would that have to look like? And we use as an example the Priest Lake Education Foundation raises fund, and then they pay for the preschool, and I think they pay for Art Smart up there. And so it's set up there's a separate fund set up, and then they go to the school district. We talked about the Title IX, district additional costs, cleanup, oversight, maintenance, what things might not be covered by, just the basic matrix that Jared put together. State trips, a lot of costs related to these. Question was, if one sport receives funds, can it run under Title IX? If you have something for boys, you've got to do something for girls. Transportation, talks about coaches maybe volunteering their time. National Forum, I think that had to do with the, does anybody remember what that one had to do? Not necessarily, okay. And then we talked about reaching out to Grangeville to see what they did, how they worked in terms, because they had no transportation for extracurricular, co-curricular. And what did they do? And I did reach out to Grangeville, and I also reached out to Twin Falls, like I said I would, and I'll give you an update in a second. So coaches in charge, coaches would be liable for transportation. So we looked at parents at Twin Falls. Twin Falls does provide transportation for their extracurricular, co-curricular. They do have a waiver form, not necessarily applicable. Again, I'll give you a little update on that. Legality, that one coach is paid, looked at PTO, PTA, and other means of collecting funds. Can't remember what PRYC is, but a nonprofit for curriculum activity. And then page 5.
That's the youth sports.
That was a youth sports.
Oh, that, yeah, his. It's for co-curricular. Specific.
And I'm just realizing, where am I here? I should be, can you see where I am, I guess? I'm on there. And then we talked about potentially grants, received, like Ann Chamberlain discussed, talked about her dance program and getting the money and putting it in. And she's been doing that, raising funds for that dance program ever since I've been around, so quite a few years. And to do was to look at, see what costs look like with just head coaches. Again, we were looking at the custodial or everyone clean up, so to reduce that custodial fee. And then again, I'm not sure what River City was. It was kind of out there.
It's a volleyball club.
Volleyball, okay. And then there were possible, the funds revenue received goes into the 99 funds, which is the student body funds. And there's also funds collected at the game. So there's a couple of places. Has to be, and there was a question about, has to be Title IX sports, and that should have been have to have fund everything. That should be FUNDs versus FUN. If sports are funded, at what cost? Since Levy did pass, can people go to the district office and just donate taxes? That was sort of, Steffi was kind of no. She was a little concerned about how that might work, and it would be better to do a collection and then do the donation versus individual donations. It might be much more difficult to track. Is there a fiscal agent that could provide the vehicle to collect dollars, and then plan paid if community events? So the idea was if there is a, such as if somebody wanted to reserve the courts in here or the auditorium over at the junior high or the gym at the junior high, pay to use. And the thought was to look at that form to reserve the facility and see if there's a way to address that. So on page 7, we looked at, Jared did revise he did update the extra co-curricular, and I'm gonna, these were the to-do, and then I'll go back. Jared did revise it. I was gonna look at the Grangeville Twin Falls agreement, or whatever that looked like, and it's a little different. Then we look at account to donate dollars to, pay to play, look at that form, potential grants, look at proposed positions not funding this coming year. And the comment was made, don't, make sure whatever comes from the budget doesn't detract from support staff and reinstate positions. Those were things that people were concerned about. Kind of an additional pieces that came up at the end of the meeting were Bonner's Ferry, I think, was charging $200 a kid, or $200 a kid, $600 a family. Businesses were sponsoring sports, and somebody mentioned rather do crowdfunding than ask kids' family to pay. And then we were brought the Moz and Paws, and I'm not sure if I spelled that right, was brought up. Booster Club was brought up, and then worried about not having all the dollars at the beginning. And the question was, why is July too short of a time to run a levy? And then there was the combination of combining the PTO for high school and junior high, and then that mixed in with the Booster Club. So just any additional feedback on all of that at this point? That people are, and remember, open,
Maybe
this
we
is
should,
a group discussion.
maybe we should start on page, possible solutions, because some of us, we've gone through and talked to people and stuff.
We have to use the
Start on page 2.
2? Okay. Do you want updates on the to-do though? Is it okay if I update, unless anybody has anything, so we quickly do an update
Yeah,
on the
I'm
2?
sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So I'll pull up Jared's in quickly in a second, but the research look at Grangeville. I did talk to Grangeville, their business manager, and what they end up doing is they just went to a 4-day school week last year, and they don't pay for transportation, correct? Extracurricular, they don't pay for transportation. What they do is collect $2.50 a mile for the sport. So if there's a game going over down to Timberlake, they'll figure out it's $2.50, and they'll figure out the mileage. The individual sport has to raise the money. So they've got an individual account, they raise the money. Basically, the school district will pay for the cost of the bus, and then the sport has their own account, I think under the student body, comes under their student body accounts. They'll raise the money, and then they'll pay back the school district. It usually breaks even for the most part if it's long enough to cover the time for the driver and things like that. So they don't have any release form. They don't have, they were told by their attorney not to, they didn't want to, let me get the right language for this. They have not been able to come up with the language to be able to cover the liability correctly in order to have the parents drive. So that's where they were saying is the attorney strongly advised not to, board was going to take away transportation for the co-curricular to reduce costs. They were strongly advised not to come up with a form. They're still trying to work out the language of it. Still a risk of liability to the school district because sport connected with the school. So there was that disconnect. Whereas Twin Falls, so what they came down with is they would charge $2.50 a mile and go that route. And then what happened is, doesn't cover everything, but for the most part, if we're long enough, like if we were probably going, I didn't get the exact distance, but if it was long enough, then it would cover the distance. In terms of Grangeville, they don't, as I said, they cover their extracurricular, cover their transportation. They do have a form on site that would allow the parents to drive. It would have to be what they said when I talked to their director of operations, who covers facilities, transportation, and IT today. He said that they, with that one, they had a liability form on their site under their 8,000 series policies. Most of the, 99% of the time, the school transports their kids in the yellow buses because those are, they feel like those are more sturdy. Only a very small percentage, drive themselves. He did say, though, he gave me another name and I haven't followed up with it. Buell School District, down in that same area, and I think Buell's pretty small, the smaller school district. They charge $50 a sport, and that's it. And I don't know, just to help cover some of the costs. So field trips, those are funded by the PTO, PTA, sponsored men's school, the sports, co-curricular, CTE, et cetera, are covered, the school covers those. So that is where I'm on, that's what I found out on that one, is that there's a couple of different ways to do it. So we've kind of got boundary as a 200 to 600. We've got potentially Grangeville for $2.50 a mile. Buell looks like $50 a sport. And then he did say with that $50 a sport, because I think part of the conversation, the concern was, there's going to be some students or families that are, don't have the money to do it. And then that's where you go, they went out to business just to help sponsor. So there's kind of a variety of things there. In terms of Jared's file, let's see if this is, can you see this okay? Okay. So he, he did a comparison, as you might remember. Here's on the left, the columns D and E are the 2022, 2023 actual, 2023, 2024 were working. Some of those were related, identified places. People said there was some interest in coaches volunteering, but I also heard, I've heard that, that might be a hardship for some. And so there's two different formulas here at the bottom. And at the bottom it included 67, rows 67 through 77 are the co-curricular or the other additional activities. And so on the left, the 396,766.42 is the amount that would be needed, that's kind of based on this year and the last year's amounts. And if we,
I think it's fiscal year 22, 23.
right, fiscal year 2022, 2023, but I think it was also 2021, 2022, because it was part of the 2-year levy, so the numbers are probably pretty close. But this was this year, or I shouldn't say we're into a new year, but this is 2022, 2023. Those numbers are what were paid out for coaches in this just prior year. And it was roughly on the levy, or the total amount was $396,766.42. The levy amount was $399,972. The difference on this side, where it was fully funded, there was an additional $3,205.58 that was left in the fund. So that was the amount left in the fund that was expressed that could be carried forward. The next piece under there, the 25% of 2022, 2023, the understanding was that the board was interested in trying to fund some co-curricular, extracurricular at one of our meetings, and we said 25%, so that's why it's $116,000. So the potential shortfall, and this is my adding these 81 and 82, because Jared didn't have it, it would be a gap of $280,766 if we were to try to do same rate as last time, not change, not increase those amounts, and use the difference. Included the $116,000. There's still a gap of $280,000. On the other side, the $181,516 comes from not filling some of these positions, or not not funding some of these positions. And so at the end, and there would still be, do we raise for, music, band, academic, drama, et cetera. There's a bunch of things that weren't put in there, but he kind of came up with a rough 181,516. Might raise it, round it off to 200,000. But there's a levy difference now. There's the 399,972, the 2020 to 2022 levy. Those are the different levies where there's funds left over. Difference is 218. You take the 116 away, and you are left with 65,517. So that leaves, that's, one of them is fully funded, and one of them is, more fully funded based on last year's numbers. The other one is asking people to do more fundraising and asking people, and if there's some people who are coaches who are willing to donate their time, it's kind of based on that. So those are the differences in the numbers. And I don't know, from there, as you know, we still have to go through, we still have to figure out the final budget. We don't know what other additional monies would be there. That will be hopefully in the next week. Hopefully in the next week we'll come up with that budget and have a better number. But it looks like, I guess there looks like there's going to be some, there'll be some gap. What it looks like, don't know. Question would be, has anybody, any questions on these numbers? I guess I should stop and rather than ramble. Any questions on any of these numbers at this time?
No, I hope that we're gonna add a number of participants, and just because most relative from maybe last season, we can try to reach out to the coaches. I think to kind of find where we fit in this gap where you're either $50 to $200 or $600, because right now we know we're in a hard spot. We know either we're cutting coaching staff, or the community's going to pitch in, or we're going to have sponsorships, or it's truthfully going to be a mixture of all of these things.
Right.
And
It'll be a mixture of all of them. So
absolutely.
what we're planning on doing so far, which I just lost my sheet.
All right.
So just funding head coaching positions, a flat rate of $3,000. They have the option, or if they have the will, they can donate that back into the fund or sponsor kids that they want to play. I got this one. Also, Booster Club. I just went to the Booster Club meeting, and I did not see any of you there. Just saying. Booster Club. So they are starting to do, they're going to meet with Moz and Paz of Newport, and they do a tremendous amount of fundraising. And so Booster Club is also starting to do their Timber Days. So if you have the opportunity to go volunteer, you can help. Timber Days is a huge fundraiser for them. They're also looking into Spartan cards. And so they're looking into that. And I don't know if any of you have ever bought a Grizzly card from Newport, but it has a bunch of local businesses. Football team sells them, and some of the other teams sell them to fundraise for their sport. And it usually goes over pretty well. So I did have somebody.
Carl, quick question.
Yep.
Is the Booster Club 501c3?
They are in progress of finishing that paperwork.
Okay.
But I do have somebody that is a 501c, and we're looking into adapting that to help
Okay.
with funding. But it's still in progress.
Okay.
So,
I'm going to give you this someway, so you can write notes.
oh, yes, ma'am. Would you like my block marker?
Yes, that's why I keep putting this on you, because I need to, otherwise we don't have, okay, so I have to call, Paul, you just said that it was just a mixture of solutions is what you're saying, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Mixture of solutions. I just want to quickly capture that of, it might be $50, it might be $50 per student to,
And that number is just unknown until we know number of participants. We also need to make sure we keep track of female and male sports, so that that's equally.
Yep,
so
and
we don't-
that's Title IX. Usually our athletic director takes care of that, so we'll have to make sure that we stay on top of all of that information.
Absolutely.
We also can just offer varsity and junior varsity, and then not fill any C positions, but unfortunately, that means that we probably will have kids cut in certain sports. But it's 1 year, and hopefully we can, most coaches are really want to work around that. And I've already gotten a lot of outcry for people and that will sponsor, community members will, and businesses will sponsor kids if we can keep it manageable. So,
Okay, so I think I've gotten the things that we just talked about are mixture solutions, and I sponsorship $50, student EG, 250 a mile. Need to know the number of participants, Title IX. And then you were starting to say about Booster Club, because there was some other things, I just want to make sure I get.
you all need to join Booster Club. You, okay? I won't be at the next one, so. Wait, did I miss something? No, seriously though, there was 6 people that showed up to our Booster Club to help with Timber Days. Let's go, community, before I had this last meeting, there was probably 50 or 60 people here, and everybody said they were coming.
Is there an issue with them not being 501c3? It seems like our board chair was interested in that, and once he found out that.
It's a
he left.
nonprofit.
Well,
It's a nonprofit.
I absolutely know what that means, but is there a problem with it not having that status? or-
Yeah,
If you want it to be a 501c3, first of all, it has specific, I would say it's much more, I want to say regulated watch. There's things, specifics and.
Well, it makes it tax deductible if it's a
tax
501c3.
deductible as well.
But some of the community members might not necessarily be deterred if it's not tax deductible. What is the issue that Mr. Durst is gonna bring up right now?
Well, so here's what I would say. So a lot of school districts in the state have foundations that are specifically created that have the school district as the sole defined beneficiary of the foundation. And when you're talking about small dollar values, then maybe the tax advantage doesn't make a difference. But if you're looking to have somebody donate $50,000 to $100,000, that tax advantage makes a big difference. And so their decision as to whether they're going to put their donor funds will oftentimes hinge on whether or not they get a tax advantage out of it or not. So that's
But-
the main reason.
But the school's not gonna restrict any fundraising,
Well,
whether
no,
it's
it
501c3
won't.
or not, correct?
No, it won't, but I think the larger point is whether or not you can, how do you incentivize as much voluntary giving as you can?
So the other advantage of the 501c3 is being, if you wanted to do a combination of private donations, individual donations, and then say go to the inland, what is it called now in Spokane? Used to be the Inland Northwest Community Foundation. Other entities, if you want to put a grant in,
Yeah.
or even the other ones, they're not going to give you, you need to be a 501c3.
Foundations give money to foundations. That's what they do.
So that's why you do want, it takes a little bit longer. It takes a little bit, but in the long run, if you're going to set it up as an avenue to be able to use in the future, it's a more established. It doesn't mean that if they're trying to, but again, when I was going back to the Booster Club and the setting up the 501c3, they've got to have the mission that they need an umbrella mission that covers what is needed. Because otherwise, then they have to, if they are outside their mission, then all of a sudden that becomes taxable income that they have to report and they have to pay taxes on.
And there's definitely best practices that we can formulate off of. It's already been done, and we just put it under our umbrella.
And do you know the 501c, the Booster Club, is it, you were there with the mission on it, or the bylaws, what's their mission, does it cover broad enough?
I have no idea, but I'd love to answer that question, so I don't know.
Okay, so we need to know, because that's the big thing, is that the mission, what is it? It needs to be broad enough. Or defined enough, to cover
until that gets its 501c3, a lot of the youth athletic programs already do have 501c3 status. And if it would help, because it's kind of all or nothing, the youth programs can accept these larger donations and pay to play in these facilities so that we can still make ends meet for this short term.
So maybe we should make what about brainstorm a list of local 501c3s possible, just a list of who might be in here besides Booster Club, just to get a sense. Does that make sense to people?
PYRS,
Yeah, pretty sure youth sports.
So what am I calling these organizations? Okay. So you've got PYRC, which stands for,
Priest River Youth,
oops, I got it the wrong way. I spelled it wrong here. River Youth. What's the last one? Oh, S, okay. Okay, and then the Booster Club. We've got PTOs, right? For, I know Priest Lake, Priest River, all the elementaries, Idaho Hills. Are there junior high and high school where sort of way potentially,
Priest River Youth, Little Guys Wrestling,
what is it?
Priest River Youth, or Priest River Little Guys Wrestling Club,
Priest River,
LG, PRLG,
PRLG, okay, PRLG,
WC,
WC. So that Priest River, LG for
Little Guys,
little guys,
and girls.
okay. Girls, don't want to discriminate here.
I don't know about, Priest River Junior Tackle Football too, I don't know.
I just texted Brandon thinks so. You could put Priest River Junior Tackle on there. I'm not positive that it's a 501c3.
Junior tackle, okay, so that's Priest River, obviously, junior, Priest River, junior tackle. Okay, and we've also, these are kind of athletic organizations, but we also have potentially the Priest River, what's the Priest River Community Foundation?
Yeah.
That's right. Just to think about, as we were thinking about maybe the art programs, the music programs, things like that might be appropriate for under the, that might be able to help under that one.
And along those lines too, Sandpoint offers a program for homeschooled kids that attend 1 day a week, but they get to count those as attendees. It would be very nice if we can try to do something like that as well here, and that might provide some additional funding that can sponsor the co-curricular activities too.
So use this as an example?
Yes.
Okay.
And those are more broader things like farmsteading, homesteading, lots of other things that are useful in life outside of textbooks and that kind of match with our rural area.
And that might be this would be sort of falling into the 4-day though too, right? A little bit, or the 5th day of the 4-day.
Very possible, yeah.
5th day.
I know families from Priest River travel to Sandpoint right now because it's available there and not here.
And Barney, you could also write the Newport Hospital Foundation.
This is like a mission statement. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what's the one, and I have to look at their timing. We have also, some things to look at. I don't know their timing. I would say organizations, and this would be organizations and funding entities. The other one might be the Idaho Community Foundation. There's the league, there's the women's league, and we don't want to draw from other things that people people may be using, but there's the Women's League, or I can't remember the name of the group over in Sandpoint that people have done a smaller scale. But I know that the teachers and the schools have been using that, so we also want to be careful about not tapping into, be competitive with those other entities. There's also a bigger one, as I said, it used to be the Northwest Community Foundation. That was its former name, and it has another name. That's one in Spokane. It's a bigger foundation.
Those might be opportunities to see if they want to expand.
Yeah. And it would be, it has a new name, and it begins with I want to say can't remember. I can look it up pretty quickly. This is the old name here. So, given, that would be one area to look at, maybe even either for grants or avenues to put money.
The Innovia Foundation,
That's the one, yeah. It's now Novia.
Innovia, yeah.
It's
INOVIA.
N-O-V-A.
INNOVIA.
Yeah, that sounds right. That's its new name. So those would be possibilities. I guess the next part you have. What else do we need to kind of brainstorm on at this point?
I really think we need to talk, what's stopping us from doing another levy? Even for the August levy, I feel like that's something that's extremely
So
imperative.
let me give you the timeline on the levy. I know this is brought up. The final levy has to be approved, the paperwork has to be to the board clerk by Monday, the 10th. And you have to do a board resolution, we have to figure out what goes on it, we have to hold another meeting, we would have to notice it appropriately. And then, I did call the county to see if there was any ways, flexibility on that date. There isn't, it's a hard fast, and obviously we would have to get everybody into play. So realistically, basically, there's no way we can do it, given that, even though it would have been a smaller one, it's just too many pieces to put together at one time.
So I really,
And it's up to the board, but if you do one in November, if we do a levy in November, that actually goes into the next year.
which would still be fine. I think that is definitely something that if we start working on that now to potentially implement for a November levy, it would be helpful.
Yeah, and I think all of this brainstorming, seeing what people want to do, that pay to play, looking at, here's the plan, and the idea is, well, the next full board meeting is on the third Wednesday, 21st. Are you gone? Yes. You're gone. But we would hopefully, but maybe we could come up with a proposed, some thoughts about what we, to the full board.
Yeah.
And bring it to the full board. And by then, we should know, what the budget, how much is needed. But the other thing is, I don't know if I want to say it's, we know something's needed, probably. We also, there may be a need for the 5th day, because we never really did a good deep dive into the 5th day for the community, as well as we maybe should have done. Even if monies were raised now, that, if you look at it as both extracurricular, co-curricular, and 5th day, there may be a way. And, Mr. Durst, did the Boys and Girls Club, because I know you're familiar with that, would they be another avenue for
Margie, do you know off the top of your head what the cutoff date is for running levy in November?
It would be 45 days before November,
So
or the 45 days before that,
November 6th.
that vote. And I can't speak for the full board, but I know that, there's a good chance, I mean, there's a chance that we would be talking about that. As I said, we can't talk on behalf of the full board. But with the legislature saying that you can't run a levy in March now, we either have to be back in the seat, back again, doing this in May next year, for the next following year, or we have to try to come up with something in November. And I guess my preference is going to be, I don't know if we can do it, but try to come up with something in November, even though it's way out there, because if it doesn't pass in November, then we can have May. But they took away that March date, and that just, we were the dry run on that, because we couldn't do it in March this year for a variety of reasons. But every other school district now is going to be in the same place. They're either going to run it in November, they'll try running it in November, or they're going to gamble on May. Because that's where we're at, which is really, kind of scary. I mean, what we're facing, so that's the difference. So we'll have to hopefully we'll go through this process, figure out what we've got, but look at the other things that we're willing to look at. So I guess one of the things is that pay to play, we need to figure out where that form is. There's a form that we have for reservation for using the facility, and maybe I'll try to get hold of that one. Or is it not pay to play, but that would be reserving, well, it is sort of, it's kind of using, there's a reservation form that. Facilities form. Facilities use form is what we need to look at. Maybe propose looking at that a little bit more closely. And seeing, do we charge on that? I mean, there's a couple of things that happen at the junior high, using the gym, using the auditorium, that has just been part of the community contribution. What we need to look at is that something, proposed, is there something there that we could at least make a little money? It might not be a lot, but on that one might be is how many events? It might be, I don't know if we can get this, and this is again, sort of Mr. Durst with your, because for the numbers, is how many can we find out how many events are used? I'm assuming all those facility use documents are maybe in one place. And what we need to figure out is how many, maybe how many do we do in a year generally? And then look at them, kind of look at them and see who's using them, and is it something, is it something to propose? So how many sort of events?
I'm not sure if we're gonna have accuracy with that.
What's that?
I don't know that there's gonna be accuracy with that. I know that we've done facility use forms, but they haven't always been respected. Like when a facility use form is submitted, depending on the school, they have precedence over other schools, age group wise, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how effective pulling those would be to really determine how often the
Can we get a
facilities are
guess?
needed.
Would it be helpful for a guesstimate?
Possibly, yeah.
So I don't expect hard, fast numbers probably on that one at this point, but a guesstimate of maybe, is it 5
Right,
or is it 20?
right.
That's, even just getting that sense of how many might be used. And, just, that may be something for the, the boards again to look at, general speaking, of what might be feasible. And then that's separate from, when people use, I'm thinking of at Priest Lake, people use the volleyball, use the gym up there for volleyball and basketball in the wintertime. I think, I'm trying to think if they actually do pay a little bit, but what we would want, I think, at minimum, is to cover the maintenance and utilities at minimum of the site. Is to propose covering the maintenance and utilities of the site. Would be maybe what that's being looked at.
So I just got a text message from Angela Goins, which she's been athletic director for the junior high, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. She says a shitload of facility use forms. So, a lot. She's
We'll put
headed,
it on the table.
yeah, okay. She's headed this way to explain it in further detail, but yes, lots.
Okay, so junior high, I won't say what she said, but a lot. A lot of forms. There. So that would be, that's one area, and help me. Sports would be in each school because the principal has something to do with.
Yes,
Yes,
Ms. Parker. Yep, yep.
you have to fill out one. There should be a spreadsheet, I'm assuming, even somewhere down at the district office where all of that is listed, where you can, so to see who has what times in the gym and stuff. It's also a lot of that.
Yeah, because usually we would submit it to, like, one of the front desk ladies at the elementary school. They would approve it through Lynn and Ken, I believe.
Right.
And then once it was approved, we'd move to the next step and whether we had the gym or not, so.
Okay, so there's another place, I mean, these aren't big dollars, but every dollar counts. So help me, because there's different types of events. There's sports events. So we've got, I don't know, I mean, when you play sports, when you use the gym at the junior high for, say, an evening sport event, do you do a facilities use form?
Yes.
So you all do, okay.
You're supposed to. Yeah, so I think that before we go too much in detail on that, maybe we should just contact
Okay.
district office and find out, or now we don't have a facilities administrator, but maybe there's some avenue, maybe Lynn would know, or Susie Bucky. I want to say there's some sort of a spreadsheet that has, so basically it goes through the process.
Okay. So we'll try to sort of, it'd be good to get a handle on that in some way to figure out what we've got there. So we kind of looked at, and this would this technically be pay to play as well? Are we calling this, or is that a little different?
No, it would just be rental. If you like the facilities,
That would make more sense. One for
At the very beginning of the season.
I mean, we can donate, I mean, we would have to be a fairly small amount, or we turn a big one to donate at the end.
So Lake Conroe School District on their website has a facility use fee schedule.
Like, which one?
Lake Conroe.
Everybody's LPO?
Yeah.
Has
I've been
a-
trying to find a current one.
So has a facilities,
Yeah, so it talks about the rental rooms like auditorium, cafeteria, fields. There's hourly rates for those facilities. They also have equipment fees, so like AV and tech or chairs.
okay.
Personnel rates, so like custodial, a kitchen manager, depending on what you need. There's a lot of info.
Do you have a WW?
Go back. It's lposd.org.
And then under forms?
It's,
Slash department slash facility.
yeah.
Slash performance,
Slash department slash facility.
slash department,
Departments plural.
departments, and then slash facilities. I'll look it up and put it in the notes so people have a hard copy, we'll have a link to it. But I'll double check this one. Okay, this is good.
We actually use like an electronic, they have like a full create a user account.
So, I know people, is there anything, I'm looking at, let me drop over.
Hey, I have one question really quick. When it comes to the facility use forms, when it comes to each individual sport, so say basketball season, right? It's coming up. Would they do one form for the full season, knowing their dates of the games and stuff, and then do a lump sum for that form? Or will they pay each individual game Or will they have to fill out each individual form? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Will it be just one form for the season, and then this is the amount of money that it will cost you to use this facility for your season? Or will it be each game, one form, and $5? Right. I feel like it would be easier on everyone to do one form for the season and then a lump sum for the use of that facility.
Started talking about maybe having fees for to use the schools, just to help reduce the cost. Keep the doors open for years.
I would say, again, it can be, we can do option A,
Yeah.
option B, but I think paperwork-wise.
One form for the
one
season,
for
right?
season,
And then,
lump sum.
yes, okay,
That, I mean,
amen.
I think we still, you could still present option
Yes.
A and option B, which one seems to make more sense.
Yes.
There may be one that makes more, it could make one, well, on the form, it could be option A, option B, and say, because it may make sense in some cases to do it one game at a time.
Right, because basketball season, let's say you go through the season and you fill out your season, and then we would just do, if we make it to districts and we happen to be holding districts, then we would do another form for the district dates, and here's the amount for the gym time during that.
Or regular season, and you have to make a fee for
Or,
whatever.
exactly, and then you do your separate form because there was a makeup game.
And it sounds like Lake Ponderay has really a good form to follow, and we can maybe look
Okay.
at, I'll be sure to try to also download that, and maybe we can look at, I don't know if we can do this setup, I don't know if this is appropriate, but it could be that we could create a Google, I don't know how to quite do it, might have to go through the board, but figure out a way for people to look at this information, if we were pulling in a form, people, like a Google Drive
That's
folder.
what Lake Ponderay uses.
And we could put, as we're working through this, we could, as long as there's no confidential information, create a folder that some of these ideas, or even there could be a grants folder where we could put in information, could do a running folder in the front, doing, some of those applications, what those applications look like.
Learning. So like, Newport School, they have all of their forms online, and I'm sure like Lake Ponderay has all their forms online. It's all in a Google Drive, you fill it out, and you submit it or email it to whoever is attached to it. And then so we'll just have to copy it, edit, make it our own. Definitely, we can put it on the webpage, and everybody's got access to it.
And I would say, part of this would be, my ideal would be is to have this plan put together that we could present at be presented at the board meeting on the 21st, and including these different options. Ideally, let's see, ideally, I would like, we could maybe, if people are up to it, well, is our meeting on the 19th or the 21st?
So Marty, we have one on our website already, that maybe we could just
Use?
amend.
Okay. That would be.
What?
Okay. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so it's 19th, because I was trying to, I know the 12th is next Wednesday. Bless you.
Thank you.
Oh, it's Wednesday.
So what I'm thinking is we would want to get the notes together as much as possible and sort of a general outline, maybe put together by next week, because then it gives the other his board members, some time to look at it. So,
Do we have a volunteer for that? Can somebody look at that and maybe come up with an idea to present to the board? Because Marty is very involved with everything that's going on.
and I will type these notes up, and I can kind of, well, what I do for work is,
I mean, would you be willing to like pull it up and just, I'll be it, okay?
okay.
Anybody else? Volunteers over there?
Or anybody good at, okay, here's the idea. Anybody good, we have to, Berlin and I will
do my best if nobody else wants to do it.
I can.
So if you just start the format, then we'll get the information.
There's one online already that school district has. It's just, we just have to come up with an idea, a proposal to make final amendments to it, so that our club sports have access to it, our schools have access to it, and then we can resubmit it for that. So
And
just
it's
a proposal.
just being filled with all the information that we're kind of taking off of here, that, of the things that we're wanting to bring to the table to question,
Oh.
organizations
I was thinking
like that.
Yeah, no, because I was thinking that is we would take this information, let's take these notes up again.
Oh,
If people are willing
I
to,
was thinking of just the form,
oh, no.
just the sports form.
Oh, no, I was thinking, actually, I was thinking of doing, we had a nice PowerPoint to see if we could get on the agenda for the 19th, that we could click through it, and there could be a handout. But I'm thinking, I would type up the notes, but the thing would be is that what we would want to do,
I'll do it
okay,
for the PowerPoint.
okay. And then what we'll do is, maybe if people are willing, if we have some additional information, which we might have, and I don't know, I don't want to be conflicting, I'm not sure what our meetings look like next week, but I know we're going to have another one coming up next week, is that maybe we can sort of fine tune, given the additional information that we have, then we can kind of fine tune what we want to do. And I know this is kind of rushed and it's kind of an iterative process, but that's,
Why don't we think about this? I'll make a PowerPoint where you give me, you write up a shorthand of everything we've covered. I'll merge it, summarize it, put it into a PowerPoint for presentation, see if we can get something approved. If you wouldn't mind getting online or getting access to the facilities ones, that's all I was thinking. It's just coming up with a presentation for the club sports to use, because they're gonna start working real quick.
Yeah.
Cheerleading, junior tackle cheerleading starts next month, I think. I mean, it's junior tackle starts next month. Junior tackle starts, so we've got to get on this, we need to get it quick. So I'll make a PowerPoint as
Okay.
cut and paste.
and I'll do some initial research of the grants that we listed, some of the further out removed ones, I'll do that, because we don't want to forget the co-curricular stuff, so those might be more appropriate. So I'll research those. And then I think we need to figure out, somewhere in there needs to be, figure out which avenues, it might be the booster for the sports, it might be another one for the co-curricular.
Well, we could ask the booster club to come up with a short presentation, maybe.
Do you want 3 forms for high school, junior high, elementary, or do you want each one listed on one form so they could check saying we want this facility?
It needs to be one form, because the current is one form, right? So it all needs to be on one.
And they just fill in which facility they want to use and turn it into the power to be.
Yes, normally it's the facility, and then, but it's pretty detailed. So you might want to contact the district office and find out who is taking over right now for facilities
Okay?
director, because we don't have one right now.
Right.
Good job.
I have one.
Junior high, high school, okay.
I have 2.
Okay, so, and then, Brandon, would it be through you to try to get the forms, or through Brandon, facilities? Well, Brandon facilities is probably, overwhelmed.
Yeah, I would send them to me and then I'll talk to Brandon.
Okay, all right, so,
So we already have a form.
We have,
Okay.
we just need to come up with proposals.
It's updated on
Thank you.
the drive.
Yeah, because then we can just, get together and come up with a couple of proposals to present to the board. Make some decisions, make sure we get them.
I had a question from an outside source watching.
yes,
And the question was, can all the coaches in PRYS, so Priest River Youth Sports Board members, do the PowerPoint?
the only reason why I would say hesitate is that that's extracurricular, that doesn't cover co-curricular.
Perfect.
That would be, it doesn't mean that they can't make,
We can get together, maybe whoever your outside source is.
Yeah.
Maybe we can, get together.
Okay, perfect.
And then
I'll ask if she heard that.
Do I need that mic?
and I don't have anything if people want to tag team it to do a presentation. I just don't want to forget the co-curricular.
Nope,
And then
absolutely.
the other piece of this that we haven't addressed, but I where let's see where we are with that one, and we may be able to, also look for other funding for that, maybe there's a way to look for that funding if there's a gap there.
Even if we can fund our SRO for 6 months and maybe run a small levy for the second portion of it, maybe the city do a 6-month contract or a year contract and accept 2 payments. Actually, they do accept 2 payments right now, right?
What's that?
SRO, does the city do 2 payments? I think that's what I read in the contract.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
I have to double check.
So if we can cover the first half, maybe we can do a levy to cover the second half, and we can add that in.
I have a question. Where do advanced placement classes fall in all of that? Does it fall under?
Right now, we don't have any.
Because
It's only for the high school. Yeah.
So, because I have a son that's in all AP classes that passes all of them with flying colors, so I'm really worried for his next year. So, could he potentially then, who would I talk to about that, for putting him in
AP classes.
Advanced
Because he's a
placement
junior
classes.
high student.
Now, well, I would say, please be patient.
Because that's a big thing for me, because we don't want more teenagers.
No.
So,
I agree with you.
yeah.
But they, traditionally, they do offer, the high school offers AP classes. And, so like my daughter's doing online college classes next year through
Right.
AC. So she won't even be in the school, but she'll be registered at the school. So she'll still be able to do sports and things like that. And she's a
Right.
senior, she's taken AP since she was a freshman. So if we can get all of our teachers funded and hired,
And then cover those additional.
that's, would be a goal of the district, and then, I mean, that's a huge goal, because, I mean, we want to make sure that we cover those factors. So they don't, I mean,
Advanced placement did your son
Well,
take?
he was in, we wanted him to come take math at the high school, but he was a 7th grader, so he couldn't, but he tested into 10th and 11th grade classes.
So next year.
So next year, originally the plan before all of this was he was going to take math and English, I think, at the high school, and then take additional classes at the junior high, but that's super important for my family, so,
I would say that we're working on that, and it would be a super important piece of news.
yeah.
Because my daughter's coming in too, so she'll be right up with my youngest daughter, and it's really important for those AP classes,
Yeah,
because we don't want to.
So,
right, exactly, yes.
So going back a second, the homeschools, the students that are homeschooled can participate in any sports, correct?
Yes, as long as they're in the district. If they live in the district, or they can participate if they go to another school that doesn't offer that sport. So Castle Moore doesn't offer basketball. If they live in the district, they can come here and play. But if they live in Newport, they have to go to Newport. Because both of the public schools offer those sports. If we don't offer, I'm not saying this, I'm not saying if we don't, but if say if we didn't offer soccer, then they could actually go to a neighboring school and play soccer in a neighboring school if they were a West Warren County resident.
So you're saying that, the schools in the district,
Not,
if they're all,
they live, it's where they live, their residences.
but if they're the school, if the academy, local academy offers, say, soccer, then they can't come to our soccer, or can they?
Yep.
Oh, that's the
So the home,
IHSA.
so the private, like House of the Lord, if they offer basketball, they cannot play basketball at West Warren County or Newport. It doesn't matter where they live. But they can have, if they live in districts, they can do co-curriculars. So they can do art or PE or if they're not offered in that private school. Or if the homeschool kids want to come and their parents say, oh, you need PE or you need art, they can go ahead and register for those classes. And as long as there's, I believe as long as there's space and everything's,
They register in the elementary, they go to register for this and all of those things.
So I guess the thing is that anything that we apply, we put in together for the 50, if it were $50 or whatever, I mean, I guess one of the thoughts I had was we might want to reach out to private schools and the homeschoolers to engage them in the conversation of trying to come up with a solution. I think that's, if they're, I don't know how many homeschoolers or how many from the House of the Lord actually
Quite a few.
So I'm thinking that we might need to also, I'm definitely thinking that we need to reach out to them to sort of participate, think about.
To let them know that it might be different this coming up year.
And if they want to come in,
If they live in the district, they have the same rights as anyone who's registered in the school. So we can't charge them to come in and do an art class. We can't charge them to do other.
No, we're talking sports, right?
You
All
can't-
kids to do sports.
But you can't charge them any more than you would charge. No.
Right. No, we're just letting them know, like, hey, you play softball every year, you come down from the lake and you play softball with us. This year, our girls might have to pay 50, you might have to pay 50. You're gonna have to pay 50 as well.
As long as it's getting involved across the leagues.
Yes, as long as it's across the board, correct.
We can.
Yes, absolutely. Right,
They don't want to get us.
no, we're already there. Sorry. Davis isn't here, try it. Not you, I was talking to her. I know, I felt it. I also felt the mom look. I
Does
got really sweaty.
does anybody have a connection, I mean, we probably, does anyone have a connection with the sort of the groups of the homeschoolers? House of Florida, we know how to reach out to, but I'm just thinking that they might want to be aware that we are, and they might want to help figure out the solution, that we, we're trying to fill the gap.
I'll reach out and see what they're doing.
Because I think that's the thing, is that if they're not aware of it, they probably should be aware of it, and they may come up with some ideas. Definitely, I wouldn't want to exclude them, I would want to include them in the process of trying to come up with a solution. Anything else at this time? I know, Carlin, I jumped you from page 2 to page 7.
And that,
I have one quick question.
I've learned to be serendipity lately, so just go for it.
When you were talking about the resource officer, I don't know if it was on that page or the one before, sorry. I'm sorry, it was very brief. A couple board meetings ago, you talked, I don't remember if it was you or Carlin, talked about going to the city and negotiating his contract. Did that ever happen?
Yes,
We started it. We
and
have-
it's stalled right now, so.
It stalled because of negotiation in the budget? Okay, okay.
Yeah, we've got it, we've got something proposed by the city, we have to figure out the timing to
Okay.
kind of bring it out.
Okay.
But
Maybe the 21st, maybe the 19th.
the 19th.
Okay.
So we've gotten something back, we need to propose it
Okay.
to the full board. We have to see where it falls in the budget.
Okay.
So, and they were trying to figure out a few more numbers. on
Okay.
that, I think they gave us a preliminary, so that we did do what we.
I'm good with that answer. I just wanted to know if it went
I'll just put,
Meetings just in progress.
That's fine. I'm okay with that.
Something else,
We've got 6 weeks, come on. It's in progress.
I never heard what happened with the grant that Ken applied for. Did that ever come into anything? That was like a facilities grant for rural schools?
Facilities grant for rural schools.
have you heard?
Over like $3 million.
Was it with Ken?
Do you know what the amount was? Do you know approximately what the amount was?
This should have been in April that they would have found out. This would be a different one than that one.
Well, could you just touch base with somebody like me, the superintendent, or just cover those bases? Thank you.
Because he was supposed to find out April 15th, and it never got readdressed or brought back up.
Well, and if he didn't bring it back up, he probably didn't get it, but it would be worth, it was a big facilities grant, he was looking at some of the rural schools.
Yes, it was specifically for rural schools, for facility and maintenance of buildings that were in need of repair. And he worked with Avista and all the utility companies around here, and they submitted a very large packet that they spent quite a lot of time on it too.
I know he did, I talked to him about that, and he was excited about it.
Anyone have any connections with the casino or us?
I was wondering about that with the Kalispell tribe.
Yeah,
I don't have any connections, but I wondered if they might have some.
that's gonna be,
If you don't go gambling, you can check it out.
See if I can find a connection.
everyone else, just keep donating.
Is that the grant that St. Mary's just got? Like, they just got a $15 million grant
That might be,
for like rural schools to go and redo all their HVAC systems.
that's
We were
probably,
supposed to know by April 15th.
Oh, okay.
It's going to become available like June.
I wouldn't be,
Yeah, that's when they jumped out.
so St. Mary's, maybe St. Mary's received it.
Well, and it was like 500 million, and it was gonna go to multiple
Yes,
schools
that'd
across
be it.
the country too, so.
Good job, Cindy. Good job.
But Kalispell Tribe has been very, they've been very supportive of education, so it might be worth reaching out to. I could put that on my list if somebody else wants to, but I've reached out to them before and stuff. I could put that on my, I can put that on the grant. It may not happen immediately, but it will be, I'll research that.
If a grant like that came available, who would be the first like contact person?
For what?
I would touch base with Susie Lucky, she's been writing grants since I've known her.
But the board would have to accept it, correct?
Well, it depends on what sport, but she's our grant writer still, isn't she?
I know, I think Susie's still, Susie's has been doing it. It would be potentially a federal grant, and you're right, I think the board would have to, if it had come through, at least even with a smaller nonprofit, that the ED is the one that signs off on this stuff, even though the AD and the ED has to sign off on it when we get federal, any grant, like federal grants or whatever. We'd have to do that. Anything else, if people look at those lists or whatever we talked about last week, I don't know, I don't want to drag this out if we don't, I don't want to keep people here longer. We've done a lot of meetings, and that clock back there says perpetually 7 o'clock, 6:59.
At what point do we start accepting donations? Because I know that there's been question as far as actually taking them in. So when people are coming forward and wanting to donate money, when do we?
So here's what I can say, I'm meeting with Ms. Holbrook tomorrow, and she's got a team who's working on content on the 1023 EZ, I think is the form. And so I'm helping her form a couple nonprofits, so I'm helping her go through the process of getting everything done. That should, if she's able to fill out the EZ form, that process is very quick. Should only take like 2 or 3 weeks to get done. And then she'll get an IRS determination letter, and once that happens, then they're eligible to start receiving donations once they set up an account with that determination letter. So she's already got the EIN done, she's already got the articles of incorporation done, those are filed with the state, she just needs to get the IRS determination letter, and once that's finished, then they'll be open for business.
Yeah,
It's what she's working on though, is that day.
but I would
No,
say,
so she's got, we're doing 2 different things. So she's doing that, and then she's also working with another group on the foundation side at the 501c3.
so what's Liz's group? What's Liz's group's name?
It's the PRYC, I think it's the one that she.
Oh, is she the PRY,
Yeah.
PRYS?
Yeah, I think it's PRYC is what she's, I forget what her name of it is, but they're separate, they created a different organization, and they're actually applying for the 501c3 status for that one, so,
What does PRYC stand for? Do you know?
Priest River Youth Connections, Inc.
yeah.
I think the thing is too, given these different names and people being, gonna have to be clear which is which.
I would have rather they called it the West Bonner County School District Foundation, that would have been much better, but for what it is, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So,
So that's one more,
but we're working on that, and then we're having another meeting tomorrow to go through it, so.
and I think maybe one more is to try to figure out which, do you want to give to the booster? Maybe people could give to the booster, then it most likely would come back into the extracurricular.
Well, and they do co-curricular too.
So you should do co-curricular.
At the BM.
But, and they're working on a 501c3. I don't know how quickly IRS is going to turn around a 1022 EZ, hopefully pretty quickly to generate the EIN number.
Yeah.
So the EIN number is your employment identification number. So it would be, I don't know how quickly,
Mine got done in 3 weeks when they did mine.
did you, so it was pretty quick. When was that?
Well, that was my last, I did like 4 years ago, so.
Before home.
Like that was pretty
We go, so maybe that's different.
I
So,
think, I apologize. I think some of the fear is people wanting to donate money, but being worried about who's in control of the money at
Right.
this point. Because unfortunately, we have a lot of broken trust in our
Yeah.
community. So who you trust that's taking in and starting organizations, not to say anybody that's starting them, we don't trust, but I think that that's a valid thought that,
No. And we,
That's really important point. That's why it's so important with the way the articles of incorporation are written and the defined beneficiary is really tight. So that way they know where the money has to go. If it's too broad, then that's hard. The other thing you can do, one of the benefits of going to a 501c3 is you can actually earmark your giving. So let's say, for example, you support cheer and you want to donate $5,000 to the cheer program. You can donate $5,000 to the cheer program to the 501c3 and specify that it's specifically to be given to the cheer program of the school. And that way there's a binding on that donation so that it has a specific use. But that's why it's really important that you make sure that the articles of incorporation are written correctly so that way you can.
well, and I think one of the issues is that if there is a fair amount of money generated, and having been part of running a nonprofit for a number of years, and being part of them for a number of years, the thing is that I think people, if you're starting up a startup organization, you've got a learning curve. And I would not want to dump a couple $100,000 into a nonprofit that is just starting up and don't even know the board of directors. And knowing that whether they have the oversight and understanding the nuances and understanding that if you go get money from somebody in Washington State, if you actually go out and solicit it, you might have to register in Washington State, or if you go for money in California, you better probably solicit. So there's all these rules and regulations that people don't know about. So I think the thing is to try, that's where we kind of have to look at what we've got and make some phone calls, but to try to find an avenue that has, it doesn't mean that Liz doesn't maybe, we donate, there may be money donated over there or donated somewhere else, but to find an avenue, an entity that has the capability and the length of time to understand what that kind of money means.
right.
Mr. Durst, since you have experience in helping out with this early birth of a nonprofit, are you willing to help the Booster Club do one?
And I've opened up and I'll do whatever I can.
The Booster Club as well?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I was just gonna say too.
Because it's important we don't do too many.
I
I just feel like that's a super safe type.
The Booster Club's been around a while.
I just, yeah, and it just feels like a super safe organization at every school, really,
Yeah, why-
not just ours.
Why rewrite what's already working? If we have a program that's there, why are we not using that? Again, I'm not saying anything negative about it.
Connections purpose, and who is running it also?
I don't have all that information. The only person I spoke with is Liz, and we've had some really preliminary conversations.
Somebody will help you start it. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Did you just say you were helping her start it?
I've been advising her the last week or so about kind of different things. I've been, as we've gone through this process, starting in the district, because I've got some background in this stuff, I've kind of been sharing things that I learned as I went through opening one. And so, we're actually gonna meet tomorrow for the first time. We've been talking, but we haven't actually met yet. So we're gonna meet tomorrow, we're gonna try to get things all.
And hers, I think the difference between Liz is that she started out, it was the 5th day, trying to provide some money for the 5th day. The Booster Club, and correct me, the Booster Club may be only for the junior high and high school, or is it all schools at this point?
I think it's just mostly, it's just.
So, we've only got one area here, but we've got this whole other area. So that's why we have to kind of, okay, we just did a list. Maybe I'll do a matrix, maybe I'll try to do a spreadsheet so we know where those, who can cover what. Because again, it's just those two things.
So, I don't want to speak for anybody but myself. My concern isn't with the nonprofit we give these large sums of money to. My concern is when we give it and present it to the school district. Because if we're hurting for money, and if the school district declares a state of financial emergency, they can deplete whatever funds necessary to fill in those gaps. So my concern
You don't give, be prudent, for some grants, federal grants, you have to go seek a reimbursement. And it may be that there's, okay, we paid this much, or it could be upfront, or it could be, we paid this much, we'll seek a reimbursement on it. And that way, you're not drawing down your whole, you're knowing that maybe you're spending less than you thought. And maybe that would be maybe that's under options, we can look at.
You can come with funds too, I don't know if you've seen it that way too. You can also come to form with the donation agreement, basically, that stipulates that the district is, attesting to the fact that's how they're
So
stipulating.
is that something that the 501c3 would come up with?
They
Or
would
is that
draft it, and it
something?
would be a condition of receiving the donation, same way that the federal government, for example, was to give us a grant, we'd have to maintain the conditions of the grant to receive it. A nonprofit would do the same thing, and there would be, if it's done correctly, then there'd be a cause of action to recuperate those funds if they were misspent.
Which gets into it, having an attorney involved, so want to do it, more simply, but you could do different types of payment schedules. I mean, I think it's up to what people feel comfortable, you don't have to give, the only thing about the encumbrance, yes, all of a sudden you've given that money, yes, even though it was designated it to be X, Y, and Z, there is always that fear of, did they actually pay X, Y, and Z, or do we have to go back and find out if they actually paid X, Y, and Z? If you wanted under your control, it would be, that would be a choice. I mean, that could be another block is, do you want, we're giving this, do you want a monthly agreement? Do you want to do it quarterly? Is the school district open to sort of submitting a reimbursement request at the end, knowing that this is it? That's actually what they do. In Grangeville, she said they do $2.50 a mile for the sport. They pay for it, and then they go and then they request the funds being paid for by the student body account, and it comes back.
I just want to make sure whatever money the community is raising or donating is protected. That's my biggest concern.
E.g., I guess I'll do this. So, I guess is that, really a place to stop, you think? Do we feel like we're sort of, anyone have anything, anyone here, Ronnie included? Do you have any input you'd like to give? Anyone? Okay. Anyone else, is there anything that people want?
Well, if we looked into a little bit, like, we run the football club, what if we looked into certain clubs or certain organizations just doing a certain sport? How would that look?
I think that's kind of what, again, I'm going back to Grangeville, that's what I got the sense is that what they're doing is they're doing individual sports, racing it, and it sounds like, I'd have to go back and double check. I
So,
can't,
like, OERYSS is, their youth stuff is soccer and basketball, so they want to just pull the money for high school soccer, and not hold the money.
yeah, and
They want to take donations so they can transfer that to, just the basketball, just the soccer.
And what I'm thinking of is, maybe I'm wrong, is after I put these notes together, I don't know if I have it in time, is to try to create a matrix in a spreadsheet that listed the entity, listed the type of revenue that it is, lists what sports are under there, and then, maybe it could be taken over, and Mr. Durst may have something that he's familiar with, but some way, because I think we want to track, we kind of want to track what the monies are. Obviously, how much money is being raised, what's being raised, but I think, that's where we're coming down to when we put this all together is what do people think that they, present this out to the community and see which one might fit best. And it might not be the right, always remember, it might not be the right fit, but it's a start, and it might need to be tweaked. I mean,
Because I know people with their donations are very, we get donations for our little club and it's specific, I'm donating $5,000 and it's going just to us.
and the only thing that we came back into was Title IX. We've got to make sure, we've got to do a cross-check on, somebody has to do a cross-check on Title IX to make sure, that would be and I'm not as familiar with the nuances of that one. So that would be the cross-check on that one. Okay. So hopefully, maybe feel like we maybe made, starting to get a little clearer, hopefully. Yeah, and I think we'll know more how much it's going to look like, and that would be that's the next. Unfortunately, hopefully we can get that hammered out pretty quickly.
When are they going to know that?
hopefully, but I don't know. I think we all hope it's going to be next week. It's maybe, I mean, we have to get a meeting set and stuff, but we have negotiations committee meeting is tomorrow, starting at 4, and I think the idea is hopefully get to the bottom of that, and then that can be looked at and we can see where we are. I mean, that's the, I think the intent is, that's why we pushed, we were going to have, we were talking about negotiations meeting on Monday, but we're going to push it out and try to get, we might be eating pizza till midnight, but hopefully not. I hope not, but we're committed to try to, I think, work that. Okay, I will, unless anybody has anything else, we'll just close this down.
Thank you.